Hello, everyone, and welcome back to DeucesCracked.com for episode 4 of Coaching Kristy. This is Andrew BalugaWhale Simon with the wonderful, and what other adjectives haven't I used yet? Incredible Kristy Ninja Dolphin Arnett.
What's up, everybody?
And we are back here for what I think is going to be our last session of 25 cent, 50 cent before we take a little stab at 50 cent one. Is that right, Kristy?
Yep.
And so far, so good. We've been doing a good job of integrating some of the ways we beat and identify and beat bad players with some of the sort of more advanced things we're going to need as we go up. Have you got a chance to play much since our last video, Kristy?
No. For those who don't know, we recorded the last video like a day ago, and so no, I didn't get to try and redeem myself from spewing a little. So
This is actually the same video, so it's quite possible that we see more spew.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. This is a continuation of me getting 3-bet and 4-bet a million bajillion times.
for those of you guys who didn't make it all the way through the last episode, what happened was Kristy got 4-bet by 5 different players, and was about ready to freak out. Uh, and with that in mind, let's resume mid freak out and
Sounds
see what
good.
happens. Um, yeah, I mean to sort of pick up where we left off last time. It really is tough to make sure that when it seems like everyone's conspiring against us, to not reward just the guy who happens to be like the straw that breaks the camel's back, you know. And
Hmm.
for one thing to take away from this on our end is that um, it's good to be that guy. I.e., if everyone at the table is going totally nuts, it's good to be the guy who or the girl who is kind of laying low and hoping that someone misreads what they're doing. So like one good thing to notice, this is actually kind of interesting. Um, let's say you're at a table and you're in the big blind, and the guy in the small blind is 3-betting the hell out of the button.
Hmm.
Okay, with me on all that makes sense so far.
Yeah.
Um, and we should. That's King 7 suited is a great hand to 3-bet there.
Okay.
As is King 9 suited there to squeeze with. So those are both King X suited is a good hand to re-raise with. But anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. If you're in the big blind and the small blind is re-raising the hell out of the button, you should actually tighten up your 3-betting range. Um, this actually works out great, because oftentimes the button will just equate like getting 3-bet from the blinds as like one entity,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
Hmm.
basically, we oftentimes, we like to 3-bet light to create image and whatnot. Um, we don't need to necessarily create quite so much image. We can call with that 7-6 suited in position on the button too. Hey, there you go. I thought you were going to fold it, but you didn't. One of the big reasons we can do that is because not only are we guaranteed position, but there's a great chance it's going to go multi-way, which is
Hmm.
obviously good for us being on the button. We've talked about that a number of times before about how good it is to be on the button in these spots. Um, taking a squeeze kind of sucks, but it's the price we pay for putting ourselves in such a profitable situation.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, what I was going to say was, we want to think about, we get all these advantages from creating image, from, re-raising people a lot and, getting people to spaz out. But if other people at the table are kind of accomplishing that, they're tilting one person on their own, you don't necessarily need to go take a big risk um, by doing that. All right, I want to stop the tape for a second here and ask you why you're 3-betting 6-7 suited on the button here.
Well, I just thought that it would be better to isolate in position. And this was a new table because the other one I was playing at that I got 4-bet on, it broke, so I just got on a new table. And
If I were to tell you that getting 4-bet was a good reason to 3-bet 7-6 suited, would you be able to explain that?
uh, because if I was getting 4-bet a lot, I can just fold. And if people are calling me with only really, really good hands, then this hand has better equity against really good hands than a hand like King Queen or King Jack.
Um, well, more than that, if somebody's 4-betting you a lot, we're expecting them probably never to call.
Okay.
And so in that sense, it doesn't really matter. It's all part of the plan, which is a phrase we've said a number of times already.
Mhm.
The real problem here is this is a new table. At
Mhm.
25 cent, 50 cent, what do we imagine someone's going to do when we 3-bet them?
That they're just gonna call, and that
Exactly.
obviously. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. And
and
that
go
so
ahead.
this hand. So oh, sorry, sorry. So this hand goes along with we talked about polarizing our range against people who are four betting or folding.
Mhm.
So this would be on our low range where we're just three betting so that if they fold, that's great, and if they four bet, then I can easily fold.
Exactly. And the reason why the point of the matter that I'm trying to get at here is you don't ever want to three bet seven high into a guy you're sure is going to call you or you think
Yeah.
is likely to call you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if I said, why are you three betting? Your answer would have to be either value or bluff.
Mhm.
And it's just going to be hard pressed to get value with seven high.
Okay. Yeah.
And you could say
Definitely.
you could say a bluff would be good, but against a bad player, if this guy calls you out of position with 8-9 suited, he's like doing pretty well. He's doing like really well against you.
Yeah.
And we don't want to reward people for making big mistakes like that, because in this case they're not making a mistake. So what I would say is this: if I had 6-7 suited and I was playing at a small stakes game, I would be inclined to either call with it pre-flop and rely on my ability to play well post-flop, or I would be inclined to fold. Um,
Mhm.
Three betting in a spot like this, unless I know someone's like a pretty decent player who's likely to four better fold or something like that, is probably a pretty bad idea.
Yeah.
So let's see how this plays out.
So when we're playing lower stakes, obviously we're playing against a different kind of player that we would play at like 1-2.
It's not necessarily like a
So
different kind of player, it's just that there's more of the bad players. So
okay.
we assume at 50 cent $1 that if a bad player's or if a player's at a table we don't know them, they're probably not very good. Whereas like at higher stakes, you might assume that someone was like halfway decent.
Okay.
But in this case, we're clearly not going to assume that any of these players are good. All right, so we take a donk on this flop and we call. Um, this is pretty interesting to me. Um,
Yeah, I was pretty lost on this hand. I because I wasn't sure if I could ever bet for value, or if I should just check back there and realize that I probably need to hit a four. Um, so
oh,
yeah,
I
I
think
just
a
checked
four
back
would work. I think a 6 or a 7 would all work.
there.
Um, with that in mind, by the way, I think you should raise the flop.
Okay.
Think about how much equity you have here. You're drawing to like a solid 9. What is that? Am I counting those right? Yeah, you're drawing to a solid 9. The pot's huge. If you have any fold equity whatsoever, like if he's gonna donk with a hand like Ace Queen, or some people might even donk like, um, uh, they might donk even like a hand like pocket nines and then talk themselves into a folding to a raise. I mean, I'm not saying that will happen a lot, but I'm just saying I've seen it happen. Um, Most importantly, though, like we're okay. There's enough money in the pot that we could probably feel best about raising and getting in on the flop there. You know what I mean?
Okay. Mhm.
But that said, this is one of the reasons why we don't want to three bet these hands. There's not nearly as much fold equity, so that when we flop a pair and a gut shot, we don't have a great ability to move people off hands. Like that's like a best case scenario flop for us, and it's still not very good.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
let's take compare that to Queen Jack suited. Let's say the flop is Queen 10 8. You know what I mean? That's pretty damn good and much 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 better than 7 5 3. We just beat way more hands.
Okay.
Um, cool.
The other
Go
the
ahead.
other thing that I think I start having trouble with in this video, or towards the end of the session, was when I raised with a hand like Queen Jack or something, and like what happened on the top right, and I'll c bet a flop, um, and then I get called in position. I I still have trouble figuring out when I should double barrel um and
I just
trying
don't
to
understand why you didn't see bet the King 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 flop.
oh yeah, it's the same thing that happened earlier in this video.
Just get a little
I
gun
think it's
shy
also,
because you're not winning any pots.
yeah,
Uh, I
but
mean,
still I
yeah, go ahead.
know what am I trying to do is get to shut on with 8 high.
Like,
Yeah,
watch. I bet you were gonna see bet this Ace King Queen flop.
yeah.
So we're see betting the Ace King Queen, but not the King King King. That's not good for us, darling. That's not good for us.
It's so funny because now that I'm calm and just looking back at my play, I'm like, yeah, it's really bad.
Okay, good decision not to double barrel here. This is one of those spots where we obviously have no pot equity, and on this board we have basically no fold equity. Even if he has a 2-pair hand, he's going to check it back. It's really even unlikely he folds an ace in my experience, especially at these limits. Now, a lot of players out there might say, oh, well, of course he folds a7 there for a bet. Maybe. We need him to fold a lot of stuff, though, to make that bet work. And once again, when he calls the flop, what does he have? A hand. And what do people not like to fold?
A hand.
A hand. I mean, I think it is important that we don't get psyched out, of our process. I mean, there are those two hands that we just saw, 8-7 suited on a king, 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 and pocket eights on an ace, king, queen board. On the bottom left, we should say, like, do we have, fold equity? Yeah, we've got a ton. There's a ton of dead money there. Like, even though we've got no pot equity, we can bet and be fine, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on the upper right, you'd say, all right, we have about as much pot equity as 8-7 does. A little bit more, but not that much more. And we have like dramatically less fold equity, right? Because there's so many hands that have a piece of that. So what we should do, if anything, is reverse the action of the two tables. C-bet the dry, wonderful-looking board, and check fold the awful, gross, high-connected board. And I think what we see here is that after taking basically a lot of abuse in a table, you do what any person does without a lot of like experience dealing with it, which is you start to forego the process, because there's kind of an innate feeling, like psychologically, that when things aren't working, it's because something that you're doing is wrong, And so like it's like the classic like tennis analogy. If you hit the ball too far, like you adjust by hitting it like less far. Like that's not how poker works. Poker works by you follow the process by which you hit the tennis ball, and no matter where it goes, you're happy that you did it right. Right? Which is a lot tougher to gauge, because like the results aren't an immediate thing. Like, oh, how far did the tennis ball go? The results are something that you might not even know for another 4 months. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, definitely, I know what you mean. But at any point, should you be changing up your play because you think that maybe the rest of the table is aware of the dynamic of,
Yeah,
even
if they start adjusting, I need to start adjusting.
Well, I mean, like, if I'm getting 3-bet and 4-bet maybe at the same table, even by different people, and they see that I'm folding a lot, do you ever just kind of tighten up? Because I mean, if people see that, they're gonna think that they can just do that all the time. I mean, I know it always depends, and there's a lot of situations where.
Sure, I think I have a good chance of answering that. I like this check raise, by the way. If I was going to call out of the blinds instead of 3-bet with my king queen, this is exactly the kind of board I would check raise. And on that turn card, I'd probably be pretty inclined to bet. And I'll answer your question in a second, but kind of interested to see how you play out this hand. This seems like the ideal spot for us to continue to bet as a bluff, given that we have a redraw, the flush hit. Now here's a good question about pot. We're going to check, aren't we, because we're scared.
Yeah, probably.
This is a great spot for us to keep betting, but a quick note is that pot management wise, we don't need to make a huge bet here with any part of our range. So I would be very happy to bet $10 here on the turn, right?
Okay.
I think we still got a lot of folds, and this is actually a spot where we could potentially get into fold a hand. This is I love the way this hand played out. Want to pause the tape for a second?
Sure.
I love the way this hand played out, because like this is exactly the reason why we check raise these types of hands and not like pocket threes.
Right.
Because we have a couple hands that we've already showed where we check raise like a low pair on these boards, like with no redraws of any kind. Look at this. We check raise this flop. We got 6 outs. We get called. We turn like another 9 outs, right? So now we got 15 outs on the turn. Now we should bet this, and if we bet small enough, we actually probably get called a lot more than shoved on, which is good for us. Not to mention the fact that we probably get him to fold something like, I don't know, pocket 8s that called on the flop, or maybe even pocket like 5s, or maybe even like A7 or something like that. You know what I mean? Especially because the flush hits. But now what we see is this guy, instead of raising us at any point and moving us off our equity, like we always talk about being aggressive into equity, instead of like pushing us off this, he lets us walk by going check, check on the turn into the best hand. And now this is the spot where we're going to value bet. And this is a very difficult spot for him because the king's a scare card. It should be good for us to bluff. If we're check raising king queen, we should also be check raising ace jack, right? Which means that in theory we could be having a balanced river range on here for betting. But we can pretty clearly go for value here and plan on getting called by a lot because once again, when he called our flop raise, what do you have?
A hand.
And what do people not like to fold?
A hand.
Sorry, exactly.
So that was like, but that's kind of still confusing to me though. So if I check raise and he calls me with a hand,
right?
And I'm thinking that I can't make people fold hands most of the time. So
sure. So why bet the turn?
Yeah.
Okay, great question. Clearly we need a lot of help to get someone to fold a hand, right? That turn card is a lot of help.
Okay.
So let's put it this way. Let's say the turn card was the 9 of clubs. You know, never, 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 never. Okay. But we talked about how our fold equity is based off of a number of things. One of the most important of which is the board texture. Given that, you know, people tend to play the absolute strength of their hands, a lot of players will just immediately respond to the flush hitting by thinking my hand has dramatically dropped in value. Right? And they may make a fold. Like somebody here with pocket eights, no heart, is not going to be really excited about shoving. Now, what a lot of players here do is they basically say, oh man, that's a great scare card for me, that nine of hearts. So I'm going to bet the pot and make him fold. Because the pot's super scary. And the problem with that is you put him in a spot where he basically has to shove or fold, which means he basically has to play correctly.
Okay.
If we bet half pot, we give him a chance to take, one of the two options we're okay with are him folding and him calling. Because we're looking at 15 outs. The two spots or the only thing we're not cool with him is him going all in. It's like we're not usually able to make people fold a hand, but this is a good spot to try. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, gotcha.
And now once you get to the river, it's like value town.
And if I miss on the river pairs board or something,
check fold.
Then right, okay.
And curse ourselves for not having bet the turn.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if you bet the turn and get called, it's a pretty interesting choice as to whether or not to shove the river. If I thought someone was a regular, I would be really inclined to shove the river. Because I think that they would probably have raised a flush on the turn. They would definitely have gotten a set in earlier. That the only thing that they could really have that could call and own me would be like an overpair plus a heart that gets stubborn. But a lot of players will call one more street with their pocket eights with a heart and try to basically hope we slow down on the river. That said, against anybody other than a good regular at this limit or somebody that I thought was a good regular, I would check fold.
Okay.
The mere premise of trying to bluff someone, run a 3-street bluff against someone at $50 no limit is laughable. But there are occasionally times when it might be good. That said, like, unless the person was like a very, very decent hand reader, I would just check fold the river. So let's see what you did.
Okay, and one thing I want to say on the top left here.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I did, but we talked about Vulcan earlier, and he seems like to be a decent aggressive player. And so I hope, and I'm thinking that this a just call would be the right thing to do because of me raising out of the gun. If I 4-bet him, that looks just so strong. Plus, I think he's going to be aggressive. And
it's one of those things where it's just very rare for him to have a hand that if he has a hand he's going to stack off with pre, it's very rare for him to not want to stack off post also.
Okay, so that would be right in thinking that I should just call there. Okay.
Yep. Unless by the way somebody else calls.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If somebody else calls, now it's like, all right, let's go. A lot of money in the pot. Let's gamble. Obviously, you're not gambling, but
yeah. I don't remember what I did, but
so what do you think? What kind of bet size do you think would be good here on the river?
Well, if I think of all the hands that he could call me with, it's probably
Oh, that's tough. That's really tough.
I was thinking of betting 11, but I think that 11 would have been the right bet.
I think that honestly, you could probably go way bigger.
Oh yeah.
Because at this point, you look pretty bluffy. You check raised, and then you check the turn, and then all of a sudden you're firing out pot on the river. I think that as I said before, if you could think you can bet bigger, you should bet bigger.
Hmm.
And that would be a spot where like I don't think if he calls for 11, I think he calls for 20.
Right.
You know. So in
Okay.
general, I would just say make it big.
Okay. Oh man.
Just getting crushed right now. All right, so clearly the turn here would be a check with aces, but you can't bring yourself to do it, can you? Why do you think that I think the turn here would clearly be a check?
Because he definitely doesn't have an ace.
He definitely doesn't have an ace, right?
Probably, if he checks back that flop.
But he's really likely to try to represent one
Right.
if he has air that was going to say give up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Definitely.
Let's say, for example, that he raised the Jack 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're pretty clear he's got pocket queens. But I like this, by the way, because this most likely if he raises this turn, he's got a hand that has equity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because he can't have an ace. So most likely he's got a hand that's like got a draw of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So in that event, like I do like re-raising there as opposed to just calling because, people say, oh well, aren't you going to miss out value when he calls and then when we call and we check and he bluffs the river. I don't think he bluffs the river after we bet and call a raise on the turn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I do prefer a shove there. That said, the turn should be a check on its own. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Because if I thought, okay, there's a couple reasons why he would check back the flop after 3-betting pre-flop, which is he's slow playing a hand, or he's got absolutely nothing and he wanted to see a free card. So either way,
there's one more possibility. There's 3 possibilities basically, right? Which they are: he has a weak showdown value hand.
okay. Mm-hmm.
He's got nothing, or he's got a monster,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with the weak showdown value hand, it's what sucks is just gonna be hard to get money out of him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But
That's
obviously, the only way to get value out of that hand, or a no hand, or even and the other hand, which I'll obviously get value out of anyway on the turn, is by checking. So
Right.
definitely makes sense.
So I would check there, and I would probably check raise and hope that he jams it over the top with a draw,
Mm-hmm.
which actually I think is a reasonably likely response for somebody who might 3-bet us light there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-flop. Okay, you asked a question a while ago that I said I was going to get back to, and I think I should probably get back to that now.
Okay.
I want to say the question was about when should you tighten up if the rest of your table is going really if like you're getting 3-bet by a lot of different players, like how do you adjust to that?
Mm-hmm.
And tightening up is a great way to start. I mean, I've always said you should play tighter against better players, and usually like it's the better players who are all jumping on you. Because obviously our skill advantage is less significant.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 sort of ways I would go about it would be I would tighten up significantly in the spots where I had less to gain. So like if I'm on the cutoff and there's 3 regulars to my left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tighten up, really, really tighten up there. You know what I mean? Not nearly as much to gain by raising there. Now, let's say that I am in mid position and there's 3 regulars to my left, but then there's a fish in the big blind. Now I'm going to fight for my isolations. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if I raise and I get 3-bet, now I'm going to start focusing on 4-betting and bluffing and stuff like that.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of players won't get that nuance. They'll basically just assume that your plan of action is the same against them regardless of the positions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. This is one of those things where I would say, I might play significantly looser in the mid position than I would in the cutoff, depending on who's in the blinds.
Okay.
I know that sounds totally nutty and crazy. Like, what? Looser in earlier position and tighter in later position? That's the total opposite of what we've read and learned about. And yet here I am saying that that's better. Maybe I'm just full of crap. Or maybe this makes sense.
Yeah, and it also makes sense as far as a little bit of like the respect that you get, at least from raising that position, because of all the things that people have read and heard about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people joke around about calling under the gun the new button.
Yeah.
It's like, honestly, and this is actually, I know you have some full ring experience. This is actually somewhat significant in full ring. You can play a fair amount looser in early position than people think you can. Mm-hmm. The only rule is you just have to not pay off.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand when you open true under the gun in a 9-handed or a 10-handed game, people will put you on the nuts,
Mm-hmm.
which means they'll be trying to crack the nuts. It's very fine for people to try to flop sets against your ace-5 suited. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
okay with us, provided that we don't stack off if we hit a 5. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fine.
Or even if we hit an ace, rather, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Most of you guys don't stack off so easy when you hit 5. Most of you guys aren't like quite as dumb as I am, but do you see what I'm saying? Like we definitely can use those perceptions, but most importantly, it's going to be, what are we really trying to fight for? This is why a lot of people who get involved in these crazy blind versus blind battles against a regular it's really stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you're fighting, you're gonna like put all this stuff at risk with like light hands so that you can fight over the right to maybe sometimes win half a big blind.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really doesn't make much sense.
So, on the bottom right here, when we talked
Hmm.
about betting the turn, with for when you have okay, so on the turn, obviously, I don't think I have fold equity because um when he calls on a flop like that and I have the nut draw,
Hmm.
I don't think I can get him to fold anything. So, is the check there okay, even though I have a decent amount of pot equity?
Yeah, so the biggest the check is great there. The biggest factor that goes into fold equity by far is player type. So we've got a fishy player who doesn't like to fold.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next thing is we've got board texture. And clearly this board texture is not a great one to induce folds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that the queen comes, you might actually say, oh, the queen is a good card and that the queen increases our fold equity by being an additional scare card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's potentially true. Sure, the queen is a little scary, but I don't think it's anywhere near scary enough to outweigh the fact that this guy probably doesn't want to fold anything.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Then lastly, I would say that, if he does have a one-heart hand, we probably stack him if we spike.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, no one will ever fold the king of hearts there if that if that fourth heart comes down. At least not at this limit. So I think you play the hand well.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Good. But no, to get back to the point we were talking about a minute ago, it's like we need to remember like what it is that we're fighting for. And one thing you and I have talked a lot about is, in this King 7 suited, like under the gun open, isn't that bad given who's in the blind.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's nice.
Which is, I'm sort of glad that this happened because we were just talking about this. But I was going to say, you need to remember, like, we talked a lot about ego and about keeping your ego out of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest reasons why people get in these, like, I can't get run over, like, I'm going to re-raise 4-bet, shoved, is because it hurts their ego to admit that they're going to lose some pots.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you raise with your queen 3 suited in the small blind and you take a 3-bet from the big blind, like, the only reason you would re-raise there is because you got something to prove. And
Yeah.
and that's not good. That's not good. We don't want to play poker because we want to prove something. And a lot of players get so into their own heads about not getting bullied. And this extends, all the way up to some pretty high stakes games, that like trying to knock it out of our routine now is good.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Definitely.
being able, like, as I continue to coach you, being able to watch how you respond to getting, pushed around is probably the most important thing. The fact that you're getting pushed around is relatively unimportant. It's what you do in response. Man, I sound like my old high school football coach right now. It's not what happens, it's how you react. How are you going to react?
I also think sometimes too that I mean not so much online, but maybe transfers online. But I feel like sometimes I have a chip on my shoulder because I'm a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking the first time I get re-raised, like, oh, this guy is just wants to do this because I'm a girl and he thinks I'm really tight. So blah blah blah. But I mean, sometimes it's the case, but
Put it this way, Ninja Dolphin. Everyone has a chip on their shoulder for some reason who plays poker.
okay.
And that's not to devalue yours. And yours might even be more legit than most people's. But in general, everyone has some reason why they're grinding this other than just money.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll tell you my reason from day one has been like I'm really competitive and I like to be the best at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's for that that I, put all this time and effort, mostly actually because this one guy was better than I was, and that pissed me off to no end. And so, like, that's one thing that, if when I start to feel myself getting upset, I think about, don't like play right now because you want to prove that you're better than these people. You know what I mean? Good is not something that you'll be able to know, like, by winning a pot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? A lot of people equate, winning with good, which is an easy equation to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not, like, in the short term, that's not true. Good check there, by the way. No fold equity on that board. But we'll definitely peel for 50 cents. I hope you didn't raise here. Good. Interesting card. Interesting to see what you do. But no, it's I'm not trying to question like the legitimacy of like everyone's chip on their shoulder or whatever. Half pot on this river. This isn't ace so often. It's probably just a fold. And we get 4-bet. I think this guy's new. I don't think we've been 4-bet by race with an ace before.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But here's one thing to notice though. There's something that's significant that I've talked about a few times called game dynamic, which is sort of what we're talking about right now, which is, what do you do if your whole table is going crazy? Well, a single table is called table dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But let's say it's happening on all your tables at the same time. If that's the case, it's way more likely that it represents like a trend in the game itself. Right? It's not like, just your table is really aggro. It's like all the tables you're playing are really aggro. And then so that's something that we need to adjust like our overall game towards. So what do you do if everyone's getting super 3-betty and laggy and stuff? Well, first of all, you tighten up. Second of all, you stack off lighter, and you just you play the ways that you should play that are sort of obvious and logical.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's that. Now the real problem that people have is people don't like to change their game.
Yeah.
This is why like some players do great at certain times and do worse at others, or at least one of the reasons why that's the case, because they don't like to change their their go-to. If somebody makes all their money by 3-betting every hand, if 3-betting is no good, people don't like to stop 3-betting. It's like I made all my money this way. That's how I know how to play poker. This is my quote unquote style. People need to realize that there's no such thing as, in theory, as style.
Mm-hmm.
There is a right move all the time, and no matter what style you have, whether it's Ninja Dolphin style or BalugaWhale style, you like should be trying to make the single right move. And by the way, that King Jack hand is played well. And I like that you 3-bet this ace 9 too. But now I want you to pause the tape for a second. So what we start to see now, what we've seen throughout this session, is we've now gotten 4-bet by, I want to say, 8 different players. And it looks like all different. Has this guy 4-bet us before?
Yeah, he has.
Okay, so this guy's. So let me rephrase it then. So we've got 2 different phenomenons going on, and by the way, it's really important that we distinguish between these 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The first one is what appears to be a player or a table dynamic thing on your upper left table, which is that you and this guy on your right, no gluten, please, have a thing going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that against this guy, we want to go really polarized to the point where maybe even ace 9 suited should, if we're going to 3-bet it, we should shove it. Mm-hmm. And if we're not going to 3-bet it, we should call with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we are like approaching that individual dynamic with him. That's called table dynamics, right? Upper left table. On all the other tables, we don't have any specific relationships with people quite like that, except for maybe this Po Crespo guy on our bottom right.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have what's a blossoming game dynamic situation. So really what we're seeing overall in general is the way these tables are playing, the way this game has been playing, we need to be really polarized as soon as somebody 4-bets us. You know what I mean? That like the fluke 4-betting thing is happening less often than the that's what the way people are playing, which is a little bit shocking to me. But maybe I've been out of the micros for too long, and maybe people are watching too many of these videos, and they know about 4-betting and all that stuff. But that said, our new plan here should be to plan on stacking off kind of light pocket pairs and big cards, being good against no gluten please and Po Crespo, and starting to flat with a lot of stuff that we were normally 3-betting for thin value against these guys.
Okay. Definitely.
So why don't we roll the tape and see if you shove the old ace-9.
God, I hope I don't spaz. I can't. It's so weird because
It
I
wouldn't
can
actually
remember.
be that bad to shove the ace-9 suited. You have a high card, and ooh, that's pretty bad though.
Yeah, yeah. I remember thinking exactly because I knew I did something really, really bad in later in the session, and I remember this being one of them.
This could be it, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's okay. The reason why shoving isn't so bad here is because with a high card, um, you or with an ace rather, like you have decent equity, and with a suited ace, actually you have like not terrible equity. Your flop bet size is too big here.
Yeah.
The extra few dollars you throw in there gets you nothing,
Hmm.
and yeah, that'll do, huh? um, no, I mean it's one of those things where it's like that right there. You're calling there because it sucks to admit that maybe you were wrong to three bet pre.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like you're calling there out of a desperation attempt to win the pot,
Hmm.
and like winning the pot doesn't matter. We need to stop like putting value on like immediate results, which is obviously like the hardest thing to do in the world. But it's something that if we can verbalize it, if we can make it conscious, we can potentially stop it.
Hmm. Definitely.
I'm,
Um,
I'm beyond even asking you why you were doing that. I'm 100% confident that you have no idea.
yeah. So against that kind of player and what just happened, is there any situation though in which calling their imposition would be the best thing to do with
I
any
don't know.
kind?
Pocket aces,
Okay.
pocket kings, probably,
Okay.
maybe queens. I mean, honestly, yeah. I suppose if aces and kings are right, probably queens too. I mean, you might on the one if you thought he was going to stack off light after he had four bet, you know what I mean? You'd shove them all.
Mhm.
But there's if you assume that his four bet range is extremely polarized between stacking off and not stacking off, and everything that's on the stacking off side is going to stack off no matter what. By calling, you just include a lot of the non-stacking off sides. Now, if he doesn't ever see bet or stuff like that, or if he doesn't stack off with a worse hand, then you'd want to shove them all. But the real truth is with a hand like aces, kings, queens, they probably have so much equity against his hand that like it's okay to let him capitalize on like what little equity he has, provided that he bluffs sometimes, that he stacks off badly sometimes. Now,
Okay,
let's
yeah.
let's say for example that he four bets the jack nine there, right? And we flat with queens. Like it's okay to stack off on a jack nine four board if we also think he'll stack off on a jack eight four board.
Okay.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and we talked about the just calling the four bet last time, and I kind of forgot about that, but that definitely makes sense. Um, because when, because but if you need to assume one way or the other when you start saying like, okay, so I'm gonna polarize against no gluten please or
you
whatever.
can raise the 9-7 off there to isolate, by the way. Sorry, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. So when we first say we're gonna polarize against him,
Hmm.
and then we do pick up, aces or kings or queens,
Hmm.
then which one should be our first default at least, to
Should,
to to four bet or just call with those like
oh, were you
monsters.
talking about just flatting pre-flop?
Yeah.
Oh, none of them. I totally missed. I
Oh,
thought you
okay.
meant flatting the four bet.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh,
Yeah,
flatting the
flatting
four
the
bet.
four bet.
Okay. Um, no, flatting the four bet. I mean all of them. Um, I mean I would say that. I mean, if your question is which one do I like to flat the four bet with the most, it would be pocket aces. If your question was which one do I like to shove the most, it would be pocket aces.
No, my question now my question is, if we decide to polarize against him
Hmm.
and we pick up those hands and he four bets us,
Hmm.
you said sometimes calling would be okay, because he's got a polarized four bet range also.
Hmm.
So which should be our default first before we know if he's doing that like a little bit more with bad hands or with good hands, or if he'll be
Well,
bluffing.
okay,
You know what I'm saying? Like,
what I would say is this. I would say if I didn't have a lot of history, if the guy hadn't four bet me a bunch of times,
hmm.
I would just shove them all pre and expect to cooler him the majority of the time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't put
Yeah.
him on a very wide range. I put him on a tight range, and I would be mostly concerned about losing action from that tight range.
Okay.
I.e., like if I had aces and someone that I thought had a tight range to 4-bet me, I would 5-bet shove lest an ace come down or lest I lose action from ace king.
Okay.
See what
Yeah,
I'm
that
saying?
definitely makes sense. Yeah.
But if a guy had 4-bet me or had 4-bet me a bunch of times, then I wouldn't really know what his range was composed of. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
All I would know is that it couldn't only be composed of tight stuff.
Right.
And since that was the case, like if someone afforded me a lot, then I would call with those hands. If someone hadn't, then I would just re-raise and hope to get it in.
Okay. So if we had just started and figured out that that was what our strategy was against that guy, it would just be best to, for the first time, at least, to 4-bet. Okay. Cool.
Oh,
Sorry if my question was confusing.
to 4-bet. I don't understand what you just
Or
said.
not to shovel in. Sorry, on his 4-bet.
Yeah. With if we had aces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my
Yep.
question was confusing, but you definitely
I
answered
think
it.
we got to a conclusion there somehow. I'm not
Yeah, we
entirely sure how
definitely
we did, but that's just crafty ninja and or dolphin
did.
and or whale reasoning that got us there. But no, I think that's actually pretty helpful because I think a lot of players are a little bit afraid to flat with their pocket kings there. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? God,
Yeah.
I hope I don't get sucked out on. And a big part of that, by the way, is they just want to see what the other guy's got. You know, it's like, let's just get it in, and I'll find out if you got aces or queens.
Yeah.
And that's clearly not the optimal way of playing. That's definitely not the right reason. Did we just fold queen 10 suited mid position?
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't a misclick? It seemed like you thought about it for a second.
Yeah. I was thinking that if I was, well, I remember in another video you
Hmm.
said if I was going to be raising in, well, I guess it wasn't like early
You were
positions. It
mid
wasn't like a
position,
gun.
but you
Yeah.
got two
So
cards that are high, connected-y, suited.
yeah,
I mean, what
I
more are you
guess
looking for? It's beautiful.
but before you said you have to have a reason, and obviously
Sure,
my reason
sure.
should have been like big cards and suited cards, but it was I just didn't. They had full stacks, the big blinds. I
No,
don't know.
sure.
I
It
was a
wasn't
little
you.
gun
Yeah,
shy.
there weren't a lot of bad players, not a lot of great reasons to play a hand. So, like, if we had queen 10 off, maybe we folded.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
but our hand's
Um,
just too good.
yeah, but our hand is great. And
Okay.
then you think about the types of ways that we beat good players. It's, by capitalizing on equity, getting them to fold stuff.
Mhm.
That's like the poster child for hands that's going to have a lot of equity to deal with post flop. You know what I mean?
Okay. Mhm.
Even if they call us with the pocket nines or the ace jack or even like the ace queen and stuff like that, like we'll still be able to play pretty well. We'll use our equity well. We'll value bet them appropriately. You know, it's it's not like like would we raise queen jack suited there?
Yes.
Yeah, for
Then
sure.
it's
But
not
what
the
about
same.
like king jack suited?
Yeah.
Suited? Like the real truth is that like at the end of the day, king queen suited or queen 10 suited, they're probably going to make like top pair okay kicker or like um you know two overcards plus draw or flush draw and straight draw or whatever. They're all things that we know how to deal with. You know what I mean? Now the real
Mhm.
difference between a hand like king queen suited and jack 10 offsuit is that like jack 10 just the equity suffers a lot. This is something that I've talked about before, but it's important that we bring it up because I don't think we've talked about it yet. Um, Equity is not a linear scale. So
Sorry,
it's
just 1 second. I just wanted to
right.
say I'm rewinding because there's a hand I wanted to ask you about. So
Sure.
I'm just gonna rewind
So
it to this
rewind
place
and
while you
pause, and then I'm gonna
while you
say my thing, and then
yeah.
watch it. Cool.
Okay. Thanks.
Um, Let me know when you've got it all set.
Okay.
All right.
Um, I think I missed it. Shoot. Okay, here it is. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Is the pocket 10 hand?
Mhm.
Okay. Pause the tape for a sec
Mhm.
before we get past it, or we're already past it. Whatever. We'll talk about it in a second. Um, so what I was gonna say is this: equity is not like a linear scale. So it's not like deuce 7 is equally as far away equity wise from I don't know queen 7 off as pocket aces is.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? If we'll say queen 7 offsuit is like the average strength hand,
Mhm.
deuce 7 off and pocket aces are not like equidistant from that.
Okay.
Like queen 7 off equity wise is much, 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 much closer to deuce 7 than it is to pocket aces.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody who's ever like looked at a graph of their winnings will be shocked to know how much more money they make with pocket aces than anything else.
Yeah.
Like swear to God, like half of your winnings or more come from just pocket aces. which is totally sick. Because obviously that means that however often you pick up aces is a huge determining factor to how much money you win. But the truth is that like equity, it's not like equity works like that. So what we find is that like when we've got those big like that queen 10 suited, like queen 10 suited, is like kind of on like a higher equity scale, like higher equity level than like Jack 10 off. And that Jack 10 off is much closer to like 9-8 off than it is to like King Queen suited.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's just like there's each hand is one level to the next. Like it's the distances aren't equidistant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's see this pocket tens hand.
Okay. It's just kind of a general question that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I raise and get flatted.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, definitely. Then on an ace high flop, dry flop, when I get flatted here, I feel like I get flatted by a lot of hands, not just aces. And a lot of hands that I have beat. Like maybe like sevens, eights, nines,
Sure.
So even though we talk about, if the turn is either increasing our pot equity or our fold equity, we can continue betting on the turn. But what if there's not going to be a lot of turn cards that are going to help my hand or increase.
Well,
Maybe
let's not get that far ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Right? Question
Okay.
number 1: Can I bet for value? Answer: probably.
Okay.
If we consider the value that there's a lot of equity to be folded out, that counts as value.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If he folds Queen Jack here, that's a big thing for us. That contributes to our value. So in that sense, like, yeah, we can bet for value. Let's say we bet and get called. Right? Now we'd have to say again, can I bet for value? Well, if the turn card's a 10, yes. If the turn card's not a 10, probably not.
Okay, see, that was my question because, obviously I'll bet here, and if he calls, but he doesn't always have to call with an ace. So, and the turn comes, like I don't know if I'm supposed to bet there because they still.
Well, so betting probably. If we go through the process, it'll give us the answer, and most often not the answer will be no. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like most often, once we bet here and the turn card comes a 6 of spades, we say, can I bet for value? And the answer is probably no.
Okay.
Right? Because this is one of those c-bets where it's pretty thin, given that like a lot of the hands he's going to be calling us with is an ace. And we accept that. That's fine. But this is what we do. If you pause the tape again. We say this. I bet that of all the things that he calls with on the flop that bet the turn, the vast majority of them are aces.
Okay.
Right? So in that sense, or better than an ace. So in that sense, the turn play is really, really simple, right? We're not check folding because we think we're beat. We're checking in if he bets we're beat. Now, a lot of players get scared of checking there because they say, oh man, I don't want to get bluffed off my hand, which I feel like is kind of where your head's at right now. Yeah. Like, God, I really hope that I don't check and he takes his 5-3 and bets and I fold. Oh no. Right? The real truth is this. If you think that he is aggressive enough and there are enough combos of hands that he would be trying to bluff you with on the turn, what do?
Wait, check?
If you check, and then when he has a bunch of hands that bluff you, what do you do when people bluff you?
Call?
Yeah. So the real thing that bugs you out isn't so much that like we're afraid of being bluffing. We're just sad that we think he's got top pair so much.
Okay.
And we're mistaking that sadness for fear that we're being bluffed. We're not really afraid of being bluffed here. We're not check folding because we think he's bluffing. If we thought he was bluffing, we would check call. Same. And so this is one of those stuff we need to be very, very careful about, which is anytime you find yourself being like, oh, I really hope I'm not being, he's not bluffing me off my hand. You have to basically go through and say, well, does he have bluffs here? If so, how many of them are there? If there are enough, I call. Remember that the end result, whether or not he bluffs you off the best hand there, means nothing. Whether or not you make the right fold is what means everything. That makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. So, but what about, okay, so, next week we're gonna play 50 cents a dollar and move up to 1-2. So
Hmm.
where the players are gonna be a lot better. And isn't this like a type of board that a lot of people will float on
Oh yeah,
and,
some people, some players will.
okay.
So what do you think?
So,
What do you think my line would be against someone that I had to read likes to float a board like that?
to bet the river, check, call the turn?
You mean bet the flop? You mean?
Or, sorry, yeah, bet the flop, check,
Yeah.
call the
If I think the guy's gonna call me with 9 high here on the flop,
turn.
yes, I will. I would be very happy to get to bet with my pocket tens and get called by 9 high. Then if I check and I think he's gonna bet 9 high into me, then I'm gonna check call. And what you actually find is that like versus a lot of players, you can bet flop and check call turn and check fold river because a lot of players will just give up.
Right.
But this is one of those things that's interesting to make a note of when you're playing against some better players, which is let's say that you bet flop, he calls, you check, he bets turn, you call, river cards a blank, goes check check, he shows down like jack eight suited or something like that that totally missed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Make a note that he didn't bet the river. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
This tells us a lot. This tells us now that we should be more inclined to check fold the river than check call. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
by the way, let's say we check call the turn and then we check call the river, and because the board plays out in a certain way or something like that, or we got to read or whatever, and he shows down a bluff. Now we would be more inclined to continue to call the river in those spots.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Um, so like it's very. I had a coaching session today, and we were talking about this, and it's very difficult to know how to get reads on a good aggressive player until you start to see things that don't go according to the plan. You know what I mean? We personally don't like the float boards like this so often because we just don't think we have enough equity. We don't win often enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we see somebody float a board like this, it's good to write it down
Okay.
if that all works.
Yeah.
Cool. Roll to tape. It looks like we're only going to watch for another 5 minutes or so, because
Okay.
I think we've given these people enough whale dolphin time for another wonderful Monday afternoon. Yeah, actually, the next video that I'll be recording here, I'll be recording from Thailand. I know there's probably a collective groan from all the people who like to actually watch my videos because they know that when I go to places like Thailand, sometimes the quality goes to crap. But I'm gonna do my best, guys. I promise. Do my best. And this time I'm not recording on my laptop. We're recording on Kristy's computer, which means that it's way more likely that we get good quality. So take that for what it's worth, and I'll make sure to include some beautiful Thailand pictures on my blog by the time this comes out. So hope everyone's satisfied with that. That was like the worst like solution ever. I'm sorry if it doesn't work out, but I'll post pictures of myself in a sunny paradise.
Yeah.
Man,
People jealous.
the fans must love me. The fans must love me. Great.
And now that everybody knows it's gonna be recorded on my laptop, if the quality's bad, it's my fault.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. Everybody get mad at Kristy, not me. I've screwed you guys enough that I don't need any more abuse. But no, I mean this video that we've seen over the last 2 weeks, is really a really good back-to-back video for people to watch. I think because you start off so confident in rules that frankly you've just recently learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, plans that you're still developing that you haven't totally become comfortable with yet, and you start to get crushed, and you start to at times you start to go away from the plan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to not do that is going to be what gets you through the downswings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you like start to flip on your plans and start to like go back on what you know is right, the downswings won't stop. They'll just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
If you stick to the plan, downswings, like every good player has downswings. It's just the way it is. But like, someone who's really able to continue winning at that limit, their downswing ends and they end up winning again. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's because the plans that they have in place work well.
Right.
But good, it's a learning experience. It's a good learning experience. Well, due to lack of hands, I think I'm gonna call this.
Okay.
We got pocket sevens. Never mind. Never mind. Sorry, everyone. Stay in your seats. You got pocket sevens under the gun. If everyone folds, I'm calling this.
Okay.
Come on, make a call. Make a call. And he's thinking about it. I wonder if he knows he's on TV right now.
I know, and he's keeping us in suspense.
Oh well.
Oh, okay.
I want to thank everybody for watching. This has been another video. Next week we're moving. Kristy, how you feel?
I feel good. I feel still confident, and I am glad we got to go back over this video because I wasn't sure if I just started spewing too much, if I was raising, and in a couple spots obviously I knew when I did something wrong, but I wasn't sure if I was just raising too much or if I was just being too spewy, but it looks just like I just ran into some hands and
Ran into some hands, got a little frustrated, made a few mistakes. Be worth looking over this
mistakes.
again to make sure we don't make them again.
Yes.
But the plan still looks good. The only part of the plan that we would have had to change this time was our 3-betting strategy, which is tough because in the first 2 weeks videos, we were like 3-betting everyone, having a great time, 3-bet, C-bet all day long. That works against people who call out a position. If somebody doesn't call you out of position, you can't do that anymore. Right? Okay, well, thank you guys all for checking us out here at DeucesCracked.com. This has been Coaching Kristy, Andrew Simon, and Kristy Arnett saying sayonara.
Thanks, guys. See ya.